Come all young sailormen, listen to me. I'll sing you a song of the fish in the sea. Blow ye winds westerly, westerly blow. We're bound to the southward, so steady she goes.
For the 7 o'clock hour, kicking us off is my good friend Max Broderick. So happy to have him here. Max is a Bristol Bay set netter and a Cannon Beach local. And please join me in welcoming him to the stage.
All right, everybody. Fisher Poets is here again. What do you know? I wrote a little poem this morning. I'm a bit of a procrastinator. But I think I'm going to start with something you may have heard if you've seen me before. As Elma mentioned, I'm a gill netter in Bristol Bay on the Nishigack River. I've been doing that with my family now for, I don't know how long, 20-something years. My dad's been doing it for a really long time. And, you know, he's got a few years left, hopefully. This first poem I'm going to read is called, it doesn't have a title really, it's just kind of contrasting views. Gobs of fish that sink the nets so that cork lines no longer float, fathoms and shackles of web and gear empty as they roll into the boat. Easy-going holdovers from 8-foot low to 13 high, -4s that fill in quick to 24-foot tides. Fish that lie in a bag, ready to be rolled out with ease. Tangled messes of fish you pull and pick and tease. Single-gilled fish, lively, easily released from nylon web. Fish bound up, twisted, toothed, rigor mortis, dead. Nicely hauled in and picked nets, ready for what's next. Round-hauled piles of fish and web, a sticky, slimy mess. Evenings staying on top of fish and running the gear just so. Evenings getting asses kicked in rainy, windy blows. Anchors that trip as meant when given a solid tug. Anchors that won't budge no matter. They've done their job and they've dug. Hulls so dandy that the boat will barely float. Hulls so skinny there's no reason for the totes. Routine 14-hour shifts that turn into 53. Off-time lazy games of crib, naps, and cups of tea. 10-minute boat naps while making a delivery. 18-hour zombie sleeps that feel heavenly. Fresh Alaska air that fills the lungs and heart. Damp and soggy, sleeping, cold cabin farts. Belugas, bear, ducks, beaver, porcupines, and meese. Hydraulic oil, aluminum shavings, lower unit grease. Easy engine fixes, spark plugs, chase the wires. Harder ones, lower units, engine fires. No fish openers in raging tides and wind 30 knots. Open in calm and sun, catching lots and lots. Eagles soaring above the head, twilight in the sky. Seagulls sitting on your nets, pecking out the eyes. Good seasons, well worth time and effort. Down payment on a house. Poor ones too, looking around for a discount blouse. New, dry, warm, and sterile 620 gloves that fingers slip right in. Swollen digits squeezed into wet, cold gloves worn in. Perfect layer management, a consistently pleasant core temp. Sweltering heat or freezing cold, layer management unkempt. Sets that hold and hold no matter the strain that they are in. Sets that pull before you've got your outside anchors in. Nets that light up the water, a boiling stew of fish. Nets that soak the floods and ebbs and sift and sift and sift. Hot markets, fish worth at least $1.60 a pound. This year, 48 cents because markets are really down. Sunrises warm and welcome after a long, cold night that lingered. Sunrises full of fog and cold that numb and don't thaw out the fingers. Greenhorn dandy fishermen as eager as they get. seasoned salty crew and captains, real-life fisher vets. Chipper, rested crews working hard and efficient, long shifts tired, working like dementia patients. Placid, peaceful waters, not a breath of wind in the air, winds that whip the waves and blow the cap up of your hair. Neutral smelling layers of clothes you haven't yet worn, tattered, putrid, long underwear, not washed and forlorn. Letters, or even better, a package from back home, or nothing in the mail for weeks, feeling all alone. New faces from visitors down south for a week or two. The same two guys every day, the two that are your crew. Captains screaming and barking orders all the time. Captains thoughtful, ask you to kindly pull the lines. Nets that lie on the beach in figure eights, ready for an opening bell. Tangled, twisted masses of line, living balls of hell. Warm cabins, homemade bread, and heaping plates of rice and beans. Boat snacks, peanut bars, applesauce, canned peaches, and sunflower seeds. Warm bunks, damp bags, sleeping long and hard. Wet naps on top of a fish tote after eating a soggy candy bar. Candy bars and V8 juice while you chum around with your mates. Sneaky, stinky outhouse trips to hide and masturbate. 30 and 40-year captains who've yet to pass the baton to crew and mate and offspring ready to take it on. High tide lulls, campfires, and salmon on a stick. Gobs of fish up on the beach because the tide fell too quick. Woeful, monotonous, dispirited suffering and pains. Bright and sunny, joyous, smiling, grinning gains. End of season gatherings, whiskey, music, and cheer, or end of season scrambles to stow away the gear. Thank you. All right, so I'm just going to read, this is just kind of like an essay about sport fishing, and I'll just jump right into it. I used to think that sport fishermen were cute. Silly sport guys with their tackle vests on and their colorful tackle and their rods, excited about going fishing. Using sporty jargon like, how's the color today? Or any bites this morning? Or what color bead did you get her on? Mottled pink or crimson chartreuse? Always talking about river levels, how she's gonna blow but should drop into shape next week. How funny, I thought, to fish for sport, to spend hours, days, weeks chasing an elusive fish, which I've killed thousands of in a day. And the gear needed, different types of terminal tackle, sizes and profiles of hooks, leader tests, yarnies, beads, jigs, flashers, eggs, bobber, and associated bobber stoppers, flashers, level wind reels, trolling reels, spinning reels. Cute. I'll slap my gill net out and catch dinner for a few hundred families in a few minutes. I'd tried sport fishing a few times as a kid. The most memorable experience was when I was about 7 years old, and while fishing for trout, my brother hooked a native coho from Ecola Creek that was the size of me at the time. He somehow teased it to shore where I grabbed it and gave it a big bear hug, trying to wrestle it to the top of the bank. It made a tremendous movement and slipped from my hug, snapped the line, wriggled into the water, and swam off. Fun. It wasn't until years later that I found myself exploring sport fishing with my best buddy, trolling on the Columbia River. I was fresh from Alaska and didn't have any particular interest in spending a day trying to catch another salmon, but I got the invite and had little else to do that day. I also didn't have many expectations. I still thought it was a little silly and almost felt I was betraying some deep down belief I had buried within myself about fishing for sport as a commercial guy. We placed our lines in the water, flashers, weights, cut plug herring, and dropped to the bottom. An hour later, I found my hands shaking so hard from excitement and exhilaration and loss that I wasn't able to rebait my hooks. My buddy laughed his ass off at me and said that seeing a Bristol Bay gill netter trembling like a baby over one lost Chinook was about the funniest thing he'd ever seen in his life. I had hooked a fish, fought it, and lost. It was amazing. I was hooked. Now I find myself obsessed with beads, every little variation of which might help me hook a steelhead on the river, the perfect brine for herring or cure for salmon eggs. I monitor river levels and anticipate tide changes. I spend weekends, mornings, holidays, lunches on the river chasing a tug on my fishing rod. How did I become a cute little sport guy? I went fishing. Okay, this is the new one from today. Ode to set netters, I guess. Out on the water, early morn, set netters brave the winds and storm. Their nets they set with hopeful hearts, hoping a bountiful catch will impart. But with each passing day, their toil is met with disappointment and turmoil. Fish are scarce, nets are empty, their hopes dashed of catching fish aplenty. The weather turns, the wind grows stronger, their nets are battered for days and longer. The rain pours down, the waves they rise. Set netters face these conditions with tired eyes. Their hands are blistered, their backs are sore, their spirits dampen, they hope for more. But still they persevere day in, day out, their commitment to the task they cannot doubt. Although the struggle may seem too great, they stay on the gear, they know their fate. Their livelihoods depend on what they haul, so they keep plugging through the squall. Through sun and rain, through calm and storm, they brave the elements in form. They know one day the fishing will turn, they'll reap rewards they've duly earned. So here's to gill netters, brave and strong, may their nets be full as their journey goes on. May they always find the strength to carry on, and may their efforts be rewarded once and for all. Okay, let's see. I got another poem here, and it looks like it's one about my dad. Let's see if I have all the pages here. Let me just make sure I don't stop in the middle of it. Uh-oh. Here we go. We're going to switch gears. Actually, one of the next performers who's coming up here mentioned to me something about his first year up there doing the mud walk. And he said he lost his waders while he was walking through the mud, which makes sense because I've seen it a dozen times. First year, people, they don't expect the mud's going to be so sticky and sloppy, and their boots aren't on tight enough, and their boots come off, and it pulls your waders, your foot's where your knee's supposed to be, and all of a sudden you're laying down in the mud. This is a little poem about the mud walk. A mud walk is tough for an average Joe with no experience to lead with the toe. If steps are taken with the heel, you'll have to dig through mud to feel for your boot hidden in mud concealed by timeless amounts of slop and silt. Over eons these mud flats were built. By sucking and raging and roaring tides where deserts and acres of mud abide. I've seen them fall and crawl all over the place, boots left behind in anger and disgrace. The Greenhorn Mud Walk is a sight spectacular. If seen from afar on the beach, one grabs his binoculars. To watch a fellow wallow and swear, somehow there's mud through waders to underwear. A sight to see every season is greenies cursing, cussing, and screaming. So strap those laces and boots on stiff, or they will be lost trekking to the skiff. Once more, though I told you before, don't lead with the heel, but rather the toe. All right, I think I have time for one more here. This one's about canneries getting plugged. It means the fleet's brought in too many fish. and they put you on limits, and it can be really frustrating as a fisherman. Sometimes you can't catch a couple of fish, sometimes you catch too much. You either can't pay the bills or the cannery is plugged. You might get paid $1.50 or maybe 50 cents to pull gear and pick fish and pay your mortgage or rent. You might have a monumental haul and then be told the cannery is full, and in the pissing rain with fish, your nets you'll have to pull. And grumble on your way to the tender that you could have caught much more if the cannery could keep up with all the fish you brought ashore. On your way to the tender, still grumbling a bit about all those fish that were running and now are being missed, comes an announcement on the VHF radio. The cannery is no longer plugged. Back to your sites you go. Due to the volume of harvest the fishermen are bringing in, the canneries put you on limits per vessel, my friend. You grumble to your mates about the inconvenience of having to pull your gear when fishing was such a buzz, and tired and sick of not knowing what price you're fishing for and getting pounded by southeasterlies on the shore. But as soon as you catch your limit, you know that you'll head on in, so you stop complaining about the unfortunate and you set your nets again. Pulling and picking your nets clean and plowing to the tender was a pain in the ass, and by the time you get them back in the water, the smoking hot fishing has passed. There's still a relatively steady trickle of fish until just high slack, then boom, the fish train's there, and you're trying to get your nets back from out of the churning water, because if you catch too many, you charitably donate fish to the company that's paying you pennies per pound for wild Alaskan sockeye sustainably harvested from Bristol Bay by fishers like you and me who are grinding for our pay. We pull the nets while they light up as we think we are past our allotted limit. Knowing there's only a few pushes like this, we grumble, God damn it, to know that we are letting by a large portion of the salmon peak and have nowhere to sell our fish during the salmon run streak. Our method of not going over our limit, our method of prevention, is not born of efficiency, not one of pure invention. We horse the net in as quick as we can, all in an unorganized pile, and going back through to get the fish out takes a good while. So you sit on the pick, sifting through tangles of fish with a bit of a hole in your chest, because under your keel are swarms of fish, and you're sitting on top of your nets. But woe is us as we head once again toward the tender while cleaning our gear. With a boatload of fish, shackles, line, and anchors, halfway to the tender we hear a crackle on the radio. Could it be Channel 80, the cannery, our masters? Our limits increase once again, 500 pounds per permit. Hooray, those bastards. A whimper of exasperation or desperation creeps out of one of us. So we turn around, plow to that muddy spot where we'll sift this evening's flood. And though we really appreciate the attempt by our buyer to allow us to catch what we can within their capacity, we're mired. We pulled our nets twice already during a really strong push, and now we need to set them again on the muddy banks of the Nush to reach our wavering and apparently unattainable limit of fish. When it's thick, they're plugged, and we're in it. Thank you. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Max. Yeah, that's a brutal reality with the limits. Brutal. I want to remind folks that, of course, we're at the FisherPoets Gathering, but we also have a couple art shows going on in downtown Astoria. George Wilson is showing art at the Imaging Gallery. Duncan Berry is showing art at the Riverside Gallery, and Astoria Visual Arts has a grouping of different poet or fisher artists there as well, so be sure to check those out. Next, I want to welcome Wilfred Wilson to the stage. We have someone coming south from BC, and Wilfred has 62 years of commercial fishing under his belt. So welcome him. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, it's good to be back. COVID's behind us, we hope. I'm hopeful of making it to 70 years commercial fishing, and I'm positive enough I'm going to do that. I'm going to start out here. I'm going to start out here with what I call 62 and counting. When the world changes around you, you can be dragged along kicking and screaming, or go along for a different ride. Open one's eyes, open one's mind. You may be surprised. A lifetime of totally occupied summer come to an end. Slow to sink in, slow to move on. Gone are the days of mist yet again, holidays, weddings, birthdays. Lost count of gatherings unattended. So many sporting events watched solely as highlights. Being forced to slow down can actually be not that bad. We really slowed down the amount of fishing time we get in Canada. I hardly fished at all last year there commercially. This is my first poem I ever did, and this is more in related to thinking when I was young and you've been gone from home a while. I call this Channel Blues. When Channel Blues got you, nowhere is there deeper in your heart you go. Days before a streak by, fail to stir this building rip. Thrill of dropping gear put aside. Soon enough, a new moon at you. Time to place feet on land is near. Wishing that could have been in tides gone by, instead of 2 more high waters yet to be. No wonder Channel Blues eating at you. This one here, I touch upon the fact that there's work on the water all year round. I was working on a safety boat there at the freighter Superport, and we were going to work right through Christmas. And my boss felt sorry for me, and he said, you got kids, you take Christmas off, I'll fill in. Not knowing he only had to go for 1 hour, and he got his full pull, triple time. Okay. So he let me know about that one. Okay, we are the ones, I call this. We are the ones who have started our work day at every moment of the clock, every day of the year, half past dark 30 or quarter to somewhere in between. Trade with no one. Land be for rest and relaxation, and yes, to party. Once a waterman, always a mariner we be. Thrill of the chase to catch, pull, build is entrenched in your soul. For many, it is not to be removed. Aches, pains from the years take their toll. A fee, only too glad do we pay, and pay we do. To miss a child's first breath, first tooth, step, first day of school, and even graduation are only some of our biggest payments. When the winds gust so strong as to get your attention, think of the mariners whose world can be up on an elevator and straight down in the time you take a long sip of your tea, with a landing harder than anything you will ever feel. Trade not will we, for that elevator takes me to places you'll never see. I was probably 14 or 15 when this happened in my life, and I thought back on it and wrote about it. I call this wave riding. I've been on top of 30-footers that gives one something to fear, better than any roller coaster ride, for the ride could last for hours. Been on top of 7-footers that gave one of the best thrill of a lifetime. Surfing along in an open 12-foot double-ended duck punt, no bailing bucket, no life jacket, no one knows I'm there. No excuse to not stop. For once, common sense prevails. To this day, I regret not to have gone a couple more miles to the next harbor. The feeling of total elation had to be cut short. Floating along, surfing, more steering than paddling. One's butt feeling out last of breaking foam. Looking back, seeing energy bursting, coming at you, ready or not. Mariners say they've seen the biggest of them all, that give the biggest chill to one and all of their mates. I'd compare those 7-footers to any and all, for what one rides within determines what and who can say they've seen most, but certainly I'd say not all. In people's work, you know, the young guys come along and they're full of a lot of ambition, and they're going to perhaps show you a thing or two or what have you. But we've all seen that. But so this one I call going dancing. You new boys planning on showing up at our dance, best be bringing the proper shoes, because once the beat starts, there are those amongst us can see plain and simple if you've been here before and paid the dues. Sure, we all stumble. A big part of what shows is how well you recover from your misjudgment. Sure as the tide turns, doing the gear placement at the right place, right time, as well as a never-ending myriad of tasks will be the way to get the door open to the guy's respect. With permission to step inside that door on a full-time basis will be when you know you have arrived. I live on an island right at the mouth of the Fraser River. It's farm country, and then there's moorage along the island as well. And so our latitude is the 49th there, that is the dividing line between so much of Canada and the United States. And so I touch upon this a little bit. I call this 49er. We from north of the 49th parallel, south of 5440, we sweat, we bleed, we stand on end, wait for the runs to show, only to be in sorrow one day, full of pride on another. Happy to see others jagged, near plugged, as you know you'll always get your share. Racing to the packers to get unloaded, to do it more than one day, more than 1 week, more than 1 decade, gives a pride we carry throughout one's life. Same as you south of the 49th, north of 5440, one fisher to another. We are one and the same. You and me. You sweat, you bleed, you have your sorrow, and I know you have your pride. Only difference from you and me is our flag. Perhaps I sweat a little more, bleed a little more, or not. But I know I carry just as much pride as you all south of the 49th and north of 5440. I've owned my own gill netters since '72, but I fished with an uncle on the same boat for the herring. I was fortunate enough that they shut her down in '63, I think it was, because of overfishing for reduction. And I think it was '72 when they opened it for the roe herring, and I got involved with my uncle. I call this, they're okay. When young men barely moved into manhood are thrust into a totally different world. Foods, as well as so much more, are all new. Work environment now upon the water. Some crews were to be mean. Our family acknowledged as a good one to sail with by one from the first year of the roe fishery. Leaving at night in a calm sea to start the season, sound asleep crew was in the forecastle, where I dreamed a line critical was going overboard. Rope was burning through my hands as I did everything I could to stop. The more it burned, the harder I squeezed. One from bunk above gave me a smack, not to awaken, roll over, back into that sound sleep. In morning, informed that I had nearly ripped the leg off our technician. Not to show his face for more than half a day from the bow's forecastle. Captain says, enough is enough, and called young lad up. Timid as can be, he shows, where I had a language dictionary bookmark showing nightmare. Oh, says he, that's good. No, I mean, that's okay. No, that's not so bad. Dropping pants did he, showing a severely, I mean severely bruised leg, saying, I begin to think you guys not so okay. Pleased am I to say before season's end, good friends were we. I call this one counting, and it's 5 generations and counting. As soon as the canners showed, involved were we. Been happy and yes, indeed sad. Always involved in fishing, traveling far and wide along our coast. Visited more corners of this waterway than most. Each year looked upon as yet to give the best thrill ever. A wonderful, rugged, pristine environment envied by oh so many. Told at a young age, we've always contributed to society. Work at what gives you a passion, gives one a drive unseen by most. From sail to among the first few to adapt to compressed gas was my grandfather and dad. Been said my dad was the second to place and modify drum design upon the back deck. The advantage stirring compassion to naysayers. After proving the march of mankind keeps chugging along. Cousin seen a new fishery, spark his intellect to adapt marvels of machinery used to advantage. As this beautiful country of ours is to grow, I am proud to be one Canadian standing on the best land of all. I know a lot of you Americans would disagree with that one, but that's my feeling. I'm going to close here now with, oh, pardon me, I got 2 more. Same old, I call this. Creatures of habit, to see people in front and behind, day in, day out, hitting the same bump, same pothole, same plywood patches on 100-year-old bridge deck. Speeding down the same hill, only to have to hit the brakes for the same red light. Drive on the right side in the countryside contributed to road edges decay. When there's nary another soul to be seen, never to use the center of camber on road as one's comfy flat to drive upon. We certainly can be creatures of habit, day in, day out. Work on the water has the same creatures, same routine, some with bad habits, day in and day out. Gear placed in the exact place for a lifetime. Who am I to say it's wrong? For if that repetition is what moves you, so be it for you, not for I. For I just like being confined by those damn center lines. My family on both sides, we've suffered losses to the sea, and it's obviously very deeply affecting. And I call this one a legacy, and I'm going to touch upon this. Before any words were put onto paper, sea claimed family members and friends. An aunt was lost with all others on board an ocean-going canoe. And from each succeeding generation, and probably ones before, there were some never to walk upon Mother Earth again. Before ship's vast improvements, its toll was the worst. Stated a cat has 9 lives. If so for humans, I do not care to count how many I've used up. To see a cousin's body reaction after a boat's survival from a sinking on the first placement of a step upon land is a surprise indeed. For me, it takes 1 day longer to go into shock. In a confused state, it takes a bit of aimlessly wandering about before sitting with Dad over coffee takes what seems less than 2 minutes to bring me back. Now I realize why he wanted me to consider a life upon land. Generation before me had close to 100 of families, men and women working upon the sea. And now, the one after me has so few. Acceptance for me, or decline in sea's involvement, is easier to accept, for I do not want more to suffer what those on land go through with losses to the sea. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Wilfred, for joining us and speaking to the tough realities. Also for mentioning going dancing, which reminded me that that's happening tonight at Kala. That's the late night, one of your late night options, as well as a poetry slam. For the last one for this hour is Will Hornyak. I'm welcoming another Bristol Bay, another Nushagak set netter actually, to the stage. He hails from Milwaukie, Oregon, thank you, where Johnson and Kellogg Creeks meet the mighty Willamette River. Thanks for joining us, Will. Come on up.
How you doing? Good. Is this good to be live again or what? You know, I don't miss Zoom at all, really. The hardest thing with Zoom was when it was over, having to hit the end meeting button, and then everybody would disappear, and I'd be all alone in my basement. It was like, did that really happen? You know? Well, I'm the mud brother that Max was talking about earlier. I crawled out of my waders, and I found mud in places I didn't know I had places for about a week after that. And Max, I'm also a steelheader, and a friend of mine who's a fish biologist said, Will, a steelhead is not a fish. It's the name of the people that fish for them. Because who else would sit in a drift boat in the Clackamas River in January all day long in the rain and not even get a bite and come home and say, that was a lot of fun? Steelhead, right? And thank you, Wilfred. Beautiful. Really nice. I fished in Bristol Bay on a set net camp, and my first job was jumping into the holds of a bow picker after herring season and cleaning the maggots out of the hold. That was my welcome to Alaska time. And then we shoved off for a 10-hour boat ride in 20-knot winds to the Ugashik River. I was a carpenter, and I was on a crew to build a cabin for a set net camp there. And then I got flown back by our bush pilot to the Nushagak, where I finished out the rest of the season. And this is a little poem I wrote about that experience called The Bristol Bay Deranged. Alaska. Alaska is the song sung by the most enchanting siren. It is the land that beckons like the mist enshrouded island. It is America's last great place and world's largest open-aired insane asylum. And from its many wards of lunatic and nut, bush pilot, homesteader, trapper, driver of ice trucks, it's not easily predicted. I'd wager that the fisher folk of Bristol Bay are among the most sore afflicted. Now you might be thinking, Will, crazy folks abound in every port and town from Minsk to Mandalay, and I'd agree. And none could hold a candle to the fisher folks of Bristol Bay. I met those gentle folk one summer and spoke my vision bold. I'm here to fish for salmon, the king, the red, the silver, the chum, work like hell and earn my share of gold. Well said, the captain to me roared. Now get down there and scrape those maggots from these holds. And I jumped in and labored 3 days' time in the company of maggots wriggling in pools of herring slime until the captain said, boys, we're shoving off, it's time. And we shoved off in a 32-foot boat in 20-knot winds with 10-foot swells and seas. Little of that I saw, my head parked in a 5-gallon bucket held tight between my knees. As I lay in my bunk half dead, the kindly captain descended and said, there's many a tide on Bristol Bay I've plied, and many a mate I've seen in your condition. And there's only one cure, fresh air, I'm sure. So he helped me up the steps, out the cabin door to the windswept deck. So concerned was he for my disposition. But then he pointed to a 16-foot skiff that we were towing, loaded with lumber and gear and tools, and nearly swamped now on all the rough going. And he pulled the boat to port side in that heaving tide, and he pointed and said, that's where you're going. And as I slithered over the rail into the boat, I handed up plywood and tools, and I bailed and bailed. And though I protested loudly, the captain appeared greatly unmoved. And in that pitching skiff, in that pitching brine without a life jacket or line, I cried, "Captain, is our job site here fully OSHA approved?" Not long after that, we were on the Ugashik River flats, building a set net cabin in the tundra, wind, rain, and hail, cutting lumber, mixing concrete, and pounding nails. But it was there I was living high on the hog, eating and resting my head in a snug 8 by 12 foot shed, just me, 4 other guys, and a dog. Every day I take the 5-gallon bucket to the lake about a half mile out back for the drinking water, 5-gallon bucket for the drinking water, and 12-gauge pump for the bear attack. The food fell just short of sublime. Peanut butter on pilot bread and oatmeal gruel with notes of wet dog, old sock, and diesel fuel. You've probably heard the old saw. There's bush pilots old and bush pilots bold, but none that are old and bold. But our pilot, Dan, he was the man trying hardest to break that mold. His life, like his plane, showed many a scrape, monuments both to baling wire and duct tape. And the gleam in his eye gave me a fright when he landed one day and said, "They want you at the Nushagak site." And just like that, we lifted off into the air in wild flight. Now your life's in the hands of many a man, beach boss, bush pilot, boat captain, when the fates blow you to Bristol Bay, which still lay beneath us when we ran out of fuel, and by the skin of our teeth cleared the levee beneath and slammed hard into the gravel runway. Dan just laughed and looked through me with his 1,000-yard stare. But I made a mental note to me, watch out for the guys that don't care. It was at a place called Flounder Flat on the muddy shores of the Nushagak that I fell into the long season and the rhythm of the tides. Eat, rest, mend on the lows, and work like a devil on the highs. The fish hit the nets on the flood, so just after tide slacked, we'd winch the nets back and pick fish and wash off the mud. With mosquito clouds buzzing around our heads, chucking fish into pickup truck beds, we'd clear our 3 sites at dawn or noon or midnight and then push pedal to the pickup truck floor. Because the fish had to be fresh at the cannery scale or it was no sail, a 13-mile ride down the shore. And then back we'd fly to winch the nets back out while we still had water to make the corks ride. Because the greatest fear was to miss that one big tide. And it was a fear well justified. An entire season, a year's livelihood, could be lost or made good on one tide. 30,000 pounds of fish could come in on one set. And at well over $2 a pound, it was always, boys, get out the nets, get out the nets. By late July, with the red season through, and the big money too, the crew mostly went on their way. But the beach boss said, "The silvers are coming, why don't you stay?" But I was weary, tired, weary to the bone, weary of smelling like bug-dope and fish, and ready for home. So when I said, "What the hell? Count me in for the silvers, I'll go one more spell," I knew something in me had changed. And the beach boss said, "Well, look who's got a pinch of Bristol Bay salt in his veins." And I said, "Boss, that I can't say. Just wheel me away with the rest of the Bristol deranged. For in the end, who thought that I would join them willingly? And a part of me bides with them to this day. The good, the tough, the skilled, the crazy fisher folk of Bristol Bay." That's the story. Thank you. Thank you. The last time we were live at Fisher Poets, I did a long love poem, an Oregon love poem. I love where I live in Oregon. And after I was finished out in the lobby, someone found me and said, I'm from the Oregon Coastal Visitors Association. And they said, we'd like you to write, if you're interested, a poem about the Oregon coast, extolling the virtues of the coast. And I said, sure. I said, what did you have in mind? And they said, well, something that would talk about the beautiful beaches we have and, the headlands and the majestic capes and, the fact that there's whale watching and, sea lions, and also you'd want to mention the Native American tradition on the coast as well, and the fact that we have a lot of great tourist activities, golfing and surfing and crabbing and the kind of stuff. And then the fact that there's culture on the coast too. We have festivals, art, food, and wine and that kind of thing. And also the fact that these are working communities, fishermen, sawmills and stuff. And I said, hey, no problem. I said, do you want me to mention the Tillamook blimp hanger or, the exploding whale, maybe the new Carissa, wreck of the Peter Iredale, Anyway, this is the doggerel that I came up with. It's more of a list than a poem, and I kind of ripped off the style of America, the beautiful, because I needed all the help I could get. Oh, beautiful, for spacious beaches and the waves' timeless refrain, for summer sun, winter storms, for North Pacific's life-giving rains. Oh, beautiful for spouting whales and barking sea lions, for tide pools and mysteries of the deep, for rivers, Columbia south to Chetco, where eagle and osprey screech, and for the estuaries, Nestucca, Tillamook, Nehalem, the salmon smolts to nurse and keep. Oh, beautiful for earliest of peoples, the land still bears your names, Ulsi, Clatsop, Chinook, Coos, Coquille, Siuslaw, Siletz, Tillamook, Umpqua, Yahats, Yaquina. Legends of south wind and coyote still remain, along with tragic history and pain. From ashes may new generations rise and a future regain. Oh, beautiful for generations of labor on restless swells and rugged forest lands, for commerce, for communities forged by toil of head and heart and hand. Oh, beautiful for riding bikes, flying kites, traipsing dunes, making castles in the sand, for fishing, crabbing, golfing, surfing, digging for the wary razor clam. Oh, beautiful for doing nothing, save to wander sandy shores, where the ebb and flood of tides, fair winds over water, soul and spirit restore. Oh, beautiful for majestic capes and quiet bays, proud lighthouses, parks, campgrounds by the score, for Sitka spruce, fir, cedar, herds of elk that graze where meadows meet the shore. And beautiful for celebration, for festival, for art, poetry, dance, food, and wine, from humblest of chowder to crab cake most sublime. Oregon, oh Oregon, we shed our praise on thee and raise a toast to 363 miles of Pacific coast where headlands meet the sea. Thank you. Thank you. 2 minutes. I wanted to finish with it's an old song, but it's relevant these days. The older you get, the more graves you walk upon, and the more graves you dig and bury, and the more people you honor. And we haven't been together in this way for a while, and there's a few people that aren't here that used to be here. Right? And this is a little bit of an elegy. It comes from an event that happened on the East Coast in England in the 1880s. It was a very, very powerful storm that destroyed the herring fleet. And in honor of all those that we know and those that we don't who have passed. Methinks I see a host of craft spreading their sails alee, as down the Humber they do glide, all bound for the northern sea. Methinks I see them yet again, and all on board's all right, with their sails close reefed and their decks washed up, and their sidelights burning bright. And it's 70 boys and men were lost from Grimsby town, from Yarmouth down to Scarborough. Many hundreds more were drowned. Our herring craft, our trawlers, our fishing smacks as well, alone to fight that bitter night and battle with the swells. Methinks I see a host of craft spreading their sails alee, as down the Humber they do glide, all bound for the northern sea. Methinks I see them yet again, and all on board's all right, sails close reefed, decks washed up, and sidelights burning bright. October's night brought such a sight 'twas never seen before. Masts and yards and broken spars come floating to the shore. There was many a heart of sorrow, many a heart so brave. 'Twas many a hearty fisher lad did find a watery grave. And it's 70 boys and men were lost from Grimsby town, from Yarmouth down to Scarborough. Many hundreds more were drowned. Our herring craft, our trawlers, our fishing smacks as well, alone to fight that bitter night and battle with the swells. Thanks for coming out this evening, everybody. Thank you.
Far away, far away, far away across the beautiful ocean, am I bound to sail all alone, far away across the beautiful sea, far away across the beautiful sea.